Simon Dubbins, United Union International Desk Director. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So, situation of political prisoners, detaining of HDP members, aggressive invasion attacks to Iraq and Syria border, and so on. Countless aggressive topics about Turkey to talk about. So, can you see a democratic picture of Turkey? What is your comments about that aggressive invasion attacks, as well as aggressive intentions in Turkey towards the political prisoners?
Well, we're obviously extremely concerned about what's happening. And as always, we've been following it closely and been in a lot of contact with our colleagues there. A number of things that have really struck us is obviously the whole world is affected at the moment by coronavirus, including Turkey and the Middle East. We were particularly disturbed to see that the Turkish government has been releasing people from prison, many of whom we understand are people with quite dangerous criminal histories, often very aligned with what we understand to be some quite far-right nationalist groups. They all seem to have been released, but our understanding is political prisoners. There is absolutely no way they're going to be released, and they are obviously in a very health-wise dangerous situation. They are crowded in, often in very bad conditions. So that appears to us to be, again, quite outrageous, that the people who should be being looked after and who are there for political reasons are not being released when everybody else seems to be on the list to get out. Regarding the aggression, again, of course, we're seeing what's going on everywhere. Turkey has had an extremely aggressive position vis-a-vis its neighbours and other countries as well, including Libya more recently. So, yeah, it's very worrying. It's been aggressive for a long time, but we have obviously clearly seen the additional incursions into Iraq, and some of the intentions there seem to be preparing for a bigger invasion and more aggression. In the current circumstances, that would be disastrous anyway. But quite frankly, it's just a continuation of a pattern that we've been witnessing for a very long time. The brutality, the aggression and the sheer nastiness of the Turkish regime towards the Kurdish population, but also many other populations.
Mr. Abdullah Öcalan's situation. So he's been under isolation last 21 years and he can't meet his basic human rights. What would you like to comment about this? Also, what needs to be get done in Europe for Mr. Abdullah Öcalan's freedom, as he is a key for the peace in Middle East?
Yeah, obviously we've said publicly many times we have the trade union campaign for the freedom for Abdullah Öcalan, which is supported by the Confederation and most of the main trade unions in the UK. We've consistently said it is outrageous on humanitarian basis that he has been denied access to his family, to his lawyers. He has been held in complete isolation for over 20 years. That is a form of torture in itself. We're worried. Obviously, people in prison are in a more vulnerable situation with the coronavirus, so that's an additional concern for it. We would repeat in the strongest terms our calls for Abdullah Öcalan to be released. We are absolutely clear that only he can play the role that is necessary in this complicated puzzle situation in the Middle East at the moment. he is critical to finding a negotiated, peaceful solution. So it's more important now than ever that he is released and allowed to play his full role. But what I would say as well is this. I think millions and millions of people have been experiencing how difficult it is to be confined to your house. In your house, you have normally your TVs, your radios, your contacts, your friends, your family, everything. It's simply you can't go out. But that has been difficult enough, and it's understandable that it has been. We would ask everybody to spare a thought for Abdullah Öcalan, who has not only been in a much, much worse confinement, but has been denied any access to friends, any access to his lawyers, any ability to interact with the outside world, and that's for over 20 years. So I hope people, the general public, will understand better from their own personal experiences just how difficult and how hard it is to be cut off, to be isolated, and then understand how bad, how difficult and how wrong it has been that Abdullah Öcalan has been isolated, and that everyone understands, and particularly Western governments, that the pressure needs to be put on to the Erdogan government to address this question and to release Abdullah Öcalan as a step, a hugely important step on the path to peace.
Do you think Turkey should be kicked out from NATO?
Look, it's very difficult to know how things are going to progress in the next few years. It's obviously extremely volatile, and the region itself is extremely volatile. Turkey, I think, you have to just ask yourself a basic question. If NATO exists allegedly to defend Western values, I find it astonishing that we have, I think Turkey is the second largest military by terms of number of soldiers within NATO. And yet look at its recent history. I mean, it was clearly supporting ISIS fighters. It has itself invaded and ethnically cleansed Afrin. It has again invaded the parts of the northeastern part and is intending to change the demography of the area. It has sent and is financing soldiers in Libya, many of whom we understand are parts of the so-called Free Syrian Army, for which we usually read jihadis who are wearing a new uniform. So how on earth this is compatible with NATO membership is frankly beyond us. I think what is going on is there is a much bigger power play taking place, obviously with Russia in the picture, the politics of Syria in the Middle East, and there is a reluctance on the part of many governments to face up to the reality of what the Turkish government and Turkish system has recently become. But it absolutely needs addressing. I find it hypocrisy of the biggest order to consistently back a government that has been supporting ISIS and some of the atrocities and criminality, that supports ethnic cleansing, that supports invading other countries. Whether or not they will actually move to take action in regard to that, that's another question, Aaron, because there are so many other power political interests, but they definitely should address that.
Simon Dubbins, thank you for joining us today. You are always supporting our channel. Thank you very much.
Aaron, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And on behalf of my union and the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, just want to send all the best wishes and all the solidarity to the all our Kurdish brothers and sisters, the population and the wider world that supports the same cause. And difficult times, but we'll stick together. We'll come through the other side.
Thank you.
All the best.